Welcome everybody to our first webinar Crossfire of the year. First, I want to take the opportunity to thank Yeshivas Dr. Menachem for hosting us. I'd like to also take the opportunity to thank all the talmidim from all over who submitted questions. We've had over 62 questions that were given. The reason I say over is because some of them were given after our deadline. So Baruch Hashem, we've had a very positive response, and Mitzvah Hashem, we will follow up hopefully with a second session. Before we begin our Crossfire session, I'd like to welcome our guest panelists. We have to my far left, to your far right, Rabbi Mintz, who is the executive director of the Jewish Learning Institute. And to my closer left, to your right, we have Rabbi Lipsker, who is the Mashpia of Yeshivas, Oholei, Yosef, Yitzchok, Lubavitch in Melbourne, Australia. For those who aren't familiar with the Crossfire rules, what happens is I will ask a question to our panelists, one at a time, and they have 60 seconds to answer the question. And after their response, should the other panelist want to add anything, he also has up to 30 seconds to answer the question. Before we begin our Crossfire, I'd like to ask a question to both panelists. We'll start with Rabbi Mintz. Today's theme is Chassidishe life and Chassidishe conduct. We all know we are Yidden, we are Chassidim of the Rebbe, but we certainly interact with Yidden around the whole world, and they're fine Jews, they are Shemer Torah mitzvahs, they learn Torah, and the question I'd like to ask to both of you is, what is the difference between leading a Yiddish life and a Chassidishe life?
So we're coming now from Yutas Kislev, and we're told that Yutas Kislev is the day that we were given Oir v'chayis nafsheinu nitan lanu. Oir means light, and chayis means life. Now imagine this room, or any room that you may be in right now. Imagine there's no light. Is anything missing from the room? Nothing's missing. The chairs are here, the tables are here, the signs are here, the walls are here, the floor, the ceiling, nothing's missing. When you turn the light on, what happens? Is anything added to the room when the lights go on? Nothing is added, right? The same is true with Chassidus in terms of Yiddishkeit, Torah, mitzvahs, and Shulchan Aruch. Chassidus, we're told by our Rabbeim, didn't add a single mitzvah. After Yutas Kislev, there's no New Shulchan Aruch, there's no 614 mitzvahs. What Chassidus does is it turned the lights on, and it gave us a new life, a new sense of meaning and purpose in all the other mitzvahs that already existed. So when the question was asked by a Talmud, what is the addition to Chassidus Torah mitzvahs? What it does, what Chassidus does, and what we are expected to do as Chassidim, is to do Torah mitzvahs, which the whole world has, but to do it with an added measure of light, of chayis, of life. How do we do so? Through learning Chassidus, and we gain a whole new appreciation for Torah, for mitzvahs, for the Eibishter, and most importantly, for our role as Yidden in this world.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Lipsker.
Just to add to what Rabbi Mintz was saying, speaking about learning Chassidus and how that enhances and brings light into our lives. So one of the main inyanim that Chassidus focuses on, Mittel Rebbe actually says that was my father's whole inyan, trying to emphasize the idea that the Eibishter is the absolute only reality, that Elikus, that godliness is the only Metzius, is the only existence. And the Rebbe, in a very, very beautiful sikha, one of the very first sikhas in Likutei Sikhas, sikha on Parshas Noach, the Rebbe speaks about that when a Yid comes with the attitude that the world is so important, so big, so strong, it's the first thing I wake up in the morning, as the Rebbe says, I see a world around me, then automatically there are many, many things in the world that I might turn around and ask, am I allowed to do this? Am I not allowed to do this? Why shouldn't I be able to do it? And so on. However, when we come with that Chassidishe perspective, that Einoid Mulvadoi, that the only reality is only Hashem. When we come with the perspective that Ani Nivreisi L'Shamash Es Koini, I'm here only for one purpose, and that is to serve Hashem, then automatically the whole perspective in every area of life changes. I always want to know, what does Hashem want from me right now? And if there's any sort of doubt in any Inyan, I might want to stay away from it because it's not helping me in my avodas Hashem. And that's the way a chassid views life. And I think if we take this in mind, probably this will help us understand a lot of the other questions which will come up later in Chassidishe Anhaga, which are not matters of, is it a problem according to Shulchan Aruch, but rather more whether it's fitting for a chassid that's living the Chassidishe lifestyle to do these kind of things.
Thank you very, very much. What I'm going to do, just to give a heads up to our panelists, I'm going to be putting on a timer. And at the end, you'll hear a chime, which means the minute is up. If you have your own timers, you're welcome to as well. I'll ask Rabbi Mintz first. The truth of the matter is there's a few questions that were brought up which are very similar, so I'm going to bunch them together. Question number one is, can I go to a baseball game? Can I watch it on television or online? If the answer is no, why? What's so bad about watching sports? There's another question that was asked, why am I told that listening to non-Jewish music is bad? And another question is, why are cool or fancy cars and other similar items considered to be a shtus? What does shtus mean nowadays?
I'm supposed to answer in 60 seconds? Okay. So to try to answer all these questions in a short period of time, I'll say the following. Talmidim. In the world that you wake up into every morning, the world could be divided into three parts. One part of the world, which is only like 10% of the world, is Kodesh, completely holy, sacred, Kodesh Kadashim. For example, give me an example of something that's holy, that's Halik, a Mizbeach, something that we a Sefer Torah, very good, a Sefer in our home, Tefillin, very good, 770, a Shul, our Yeshiva here, and wherever we may be, there are 10% of the world that's holy, that's sacred. Who made it holy? Hashem made it holy. Then there's 10% of the world on the other extreme. That is usher, puzzle, it's prohibited. For example, what's a good example of something that's completely usher? Non-kosher food. Or listening to a koil isha someone mentioned an example of listening to a woman sing for a yid. That falls into the category of usher or non-kosher food, right? A non-kosher food, it doesn't even enter our mind to eat it. That's in the other 10%. So when we look at the world, 10% is kodesh. The other extreme, 10% is puzzle, treif, usher. What remains in the middle? How much percentage? 80% remains what? 80% remains what's called klipas noiga. Very good. Klipas noiga, excellent. Klipas noiga means it's parv. It's neutral. Whether or not it's going to be part of the right 10% or the left 10%, that depends in us. We could take, whether it's a nice car or a sandwich or a baseball, and we could take that from the neutral zone, from Klipas Noiga, and move it in to the zone of Kedusha, and of holiness, of the zone of Kedusha. And that's the short answer to the question. So the real question is, as Rabbi Lipsker mentioned in the beginning, whether things are appropriate. The question is not why can't I do so and so. The question is not why I can't go to this and this place, to a baseball game or to somewhere else. The question is, why should I? Or why shouldn't I? Given that we have a tremendous opportunity on this world to take items that are in this 80% and move it into the zone of Kedusha, every single one of us in this room, we're doing this right now. We're taking time. Time is in the 80%. It could be used to waste the time. When we waste time, bittul Torah, or we do nothing with it, we're taking that piece of time and we're putting it into where? Into the 10% of the opposite of Kedusha. When we take time and we move it into Kedusha, we're making it halik, we're uplifting it, we're elevating it. And the same is true about everything that was said. Now, just to add, even though I passed my time, the famous Reb Zusha of Anipoli said, you could learn 7 things from a ganev, a thief. And there are certain things, those are in, if a person is into sports already, or they were into sports as a child in their youth, there are certain things that you could learn from sports people, how they're very diligent and how they're very quick and how they practice and take their job very seriously and many other things. So take what you know from sports and apply it to Avodas Hashem. Apply it to how you get up in the morning, how you learn, how you're diligent about Seder, and then you're taking, like Rab Zusha learned something from a Ganev, and he made it Halik. Now, does it mean we should become a Ganev? No. But when we know something from sports, to use it to Kedusha, we're elevating it, and the same is true. Ulai lekach nivra. Maybe this is why we were created. We were created to have a machshava zara and to overcome it. And when we do that, Alter Rebbe tells us, we are every single time. Because the world that we live in and the people that we are all potential Beinanim, the Alter Rebbe tells us. And the reason why we are who we are, because Hashem made us exactly the way who we are, including with Machshav Zaras. And every time we push away a Machshav Zara, we don't think about it, we're being Mekayim, a mitzvah, just like shaking a lulav, just like saying Shema, Kriya Shema. We're literally being Mekayim, a mitzvah, esem in atoyrav le'sisura achar le'rafcham achrei neichem. So the next time a person has for a moment a Machshav Zara, think, I have the opportunity now to do a mitzvah. And every time we do that mitzvah, you know what happens? Istalek yekara the kutrabrichu b'chulu alman. We bring down a tremendous gilui of Hashem of Eleikus into this world just by turning our mind away from a machshava zara. So the first thing is to know that we're perfectly normal. Even big tzaddikim once struggled with it. Unless a person's a tzaddik, and most of us are not, and perhaps will never be. We are all struggling to be beinanim, to reach a beinani moment. And that we are meant to have machshava zaras and to overcome it, to push it away, and we do a mitzvah. So the next time you have a machshava zara, think to ourselves, we should think to yourself that Hashem gave it to us in order for us. It's like when someone throws you a ball. What are you supposed to do back with the ball? Throw it back. Hashem's throwing us a ball. You might call it a curved ball, a difficult, and we readily throw it back. And by doing so, we're being mekayim, a tremendous mitzvah, and we're bringing a likus down to the world in an incredible way, making a dir b'tachtoinim by pushing a machshav zaras. So we have the opportunity every time we have it, and that's a tremendous way to look at machshav zaras. This is one of the gifts that Alter Rebbe gave us in Tanya, Perek Chav Zayin, how to view machshav zaras.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Mintz. Rabbi Lipsker, is it a problem to have words, letters, or symbols on your shirt or clothing? If yes, why?
Okay, so I think...
Let me just repeat the question.
Go ahead.
Is it a problem to have words, or letters, or symbols, or pictures on a shirt that you wear, or any other type of clothing? And if yes, what's wrong?
Okay, I think this is a very, very broad question, and the question itself could probably mean many, many different things. First of all, clearly there would be a very, very big difference on the particular age of the boy or bacher. I think there would also be a big difference when the bacher, the boy, is sitting in yeshiva or maybe running around playing a game in camp. Might be a little bit different. But I think a general point, again, to take into consideration, something similar to things that were discussed earlier, is there's a Rambam, a famous Rambam. The Rambam tells us that ha-chacham nikar, a chacham is noticeable in many, many different things that he's involved in. And the Rambam mentions b'ma'acholoi, the way he eats, the way he drinks, the way he walks. And one of the things the Rambam mentions is b'malbushoi, the way he dresses. So very, very clearly we understand that when we see someone in the street and the person is walking in a nice business suit, we look at him, he looks like a mensch, he looks like I don't know if a choshev person, but he looks like someone that you could give some sort of respect. And when you see someone walking in work clothes and overalls and things like that, chas v'shalom, not to take away from anyone's occupations and kinds of work, but we understand that that's a different sort of feeling we have, or that the person is involved in right now. The same person may be going when he goes to shul or does other things in business meetings, he'll obviously be dressed very, very differently. So I think, again, for a chassid, for talmidi ha-yeshiva, for Chassidishe bochrim that are trying to go in the right ways. So it's not exactly a matter of which particular color shirt or which exact words are there and so on, but it's more a general thing. Am I really, even in my clothing, as Rabbi Mintz said before, that clothing, speaking about Shabbos clothing, but the same thing is true during the week, does this sort of fit with the general person I'm trying to be? And for a chassid, as we said before, it's aniloi nivreisi el l'shamash eskoini, so it's not only the few hours I'm in yeshiva. I'm a chassid, I'm trying to connect with the Eibishter, I'm trying to be in the right frame of mind, which clothing very much put me in a certain frame of mind, all day long. So I think that's the general idea. Rabbi Mintz wants that.
Yes,
I just want to add what Rabbi Lipsker just said, that in terms of dressing the way a chassid is ought to dress, right? I think Rabbi Lipsker didn't say that it's usher to wear a polo shirt. He said in camp or when a person is engaged in a certain sport activity, right? But and that's clearly the case, right? You're not going to find the Shulchan Aruch, even in the Rambam that he mentioned, that you're not allowed to wear a certain shirt or a certain sneaker. But we have to also remember, and Rabbi Lipsker alluded to this earlier as well, we are not regular people. We're not regular Yidden. The reason why we're sitting here in this yeshiva, and those talmidim who are sitting around the world participating and viewing this, the reason why you and all of us are sitting in the Rebbe's yeshiva is because we were chosen to be here. We're told that the Rebbe Rashab, before he started the first Lubavitch yeshiva, and all Lubavitch yeshivas are branches of that yeshiva started by our Rabbeim. We are all in the Rebbe's yeshiva. Whatever the name of our yeshiva is, whatever city it is, we are all children and talmidim of the Rebbe's yeshiva. And the Rebbe Rashab and our Rabbeim, the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, our Rebbe chose us, right? So if we were chosen to be, imagine if you're in the army, and the army, they have the highest soldier, the special troops, the special forces. I think they're called the SEALs, right? Something like that. Delta Force, you say, or SEALs. Imagine Delta Force, they have to go through special training. Even what they eat, right? They have to exercise a certain way. They have to eat certain foods. Why? Imagine a SEAL soldier right before a very, very dangerous mission says, I want to go eat unhealthy food. Why can't I eat? He could, if he wants, he could eat it. But he has a special mission he's part of. I don't want to wear, he says, my military uniform. Did you ever hear a soldier not wanting to? They're very proud of it. They're not forced to. They're very proud. Sometimes they're even proud to wear it off base. Why? Because when they walk in the streets and they wear their uniform, this is a member of the U.S. military or the Australian military. We are the Navy SEAL of Am Yisrael. You, especially you are the last generation in Golus, the first generation of Geula. You're going to be standing in the front line when the Rebbe comes and takes us out of Golus. So we, as Navy SEALs, of Am Yisrael, have to know that not only we have to follow the regular Shulchan Aruch, we have to follow the Navy SEAL Shulchan Aruch, the Chayolei Beis David, how we dress, how we eat, how we walk in the street. Everyone says, there goes a Lubavitcher, there goes a Navy SEAL. And we have to recognize that, not see it as a burden, but celebrate that we were chosen to be and wear our garments proudly because of who we are and how we were chosen.
Thank you very much. Rabbi Mintz, we'll move on to a bit of a different topic, actually. How can I become and do better in an easy way?
In an easy way.
In an easy way.
And when the Alter Rebbe says in the Sharblat, in the cover page of Tanya, that the Tanya is based on one pasuk, which pasuk? Very good. Ki korov veilecha hadavar ma'od. So korov doesn't mean easy. Korov means it's accessible. It's within reach of every yid. So easy, I once heard a saying, there's no growth in the comfort zone and there's no comfort in the growth zone. If a person wants to be comfortable, he's not going to grow much. If a person wants to grow, he's not going to be comfortable. You have to choose. Most of us, especially when we learn the Rebbe's sichos and learn Chassidus, the way the Rebbe urges us to. The Rebbe's whole life, as we see, the Rebbe was looking to be comfortable. The Rebbe never took one day of vacation. There's no Rebbe in the world that like the Rebbe, because the Rebbe was not looking to be comfortable, and the Rebbe doesn't want us to be comfortable. The Rebbe said the very first Fabring was the lashon, "I will mutcha you, and you'll mutcha me." The Rebbe didn't say we're going to have a comfortable chassidus. There's other chassidus that you could go if you want to be comfortable. I'm not chas v'shalom knocking any other chassidus, but we were chosen not to be comfortable, to grow. So that's number one, Rabbi, just to answer, but easy. In terms of growing, so I'll just answer with a story. I think I'm over my time, but the Gemara tells us in Avodah Zarah a story. Rabbi Hananya ben Tradion was one of the great Chachamim. He was actually one of the youngest, I believe, of the Hasara Harugi Malchus. So he went on Mesiras Nefesh. When the Romans said, "You're not allowed to study Torah," he said, "I'm going to teach Torah publicly." And he went and he gathered children and adults and he taught them Torah, walking publicly with a Sefer Torah under his shirt, but he was proudly walking and teaching Torah. And they told him, "You're risking your life." He said, "I don't care. I'm doing what the Eibishter wants, and I don't care about the Romans." Eventually, they caught him and they killed him, Rachman Litzlan. But he once asked his Rebbe, his name was Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma, who was just before he passed away. He asked him, "Rebbe, tell me, am I a ben olam haba? Am I going to Gan Eden?" So his Rebbe looked at him. He said, "Well, I don't know. Tell me something you did. Tell me something special you did to be a ben olam haba, to be deserving of Gan Eden." So he thought and he said, "I'll tell you something I once did. He was a rav in a certain kehillah, in a certain community, and he had in one pocket, in his right pocket, let's say, he had his private funds, private money, and in the other pocket he had communal funds, money that belonged to the kehillah, to the community. And by mistake, he took his money and he gave it to the community, thinking that he was giving community money, and his money was a little bit more. Let's say the community money was $50, and he gave $100. Now, what could he do? You could ask for the money back, right? He didn't do anything. It's not considered inappropriate. By mistake, I gave extra money. It's my money. Please give me. He said, "You know what? I already gave it. So be it." And he was meichel on the money. He said, "You did that? You're a ben olam haba." Now everyone asks, including the Alter Rebbe asks, the Mefarshim ask, "Rabbi Hanani ben Tradion, he was Moisei Nefesh. He went on Mesiras Nefesh literally to teach Torah, and he was eventually killed, Rachman Litzlan. But that somehow was not worthy enough. For that, he wasn't deserving to be a ben olam haba, to get Gan Eden. Amaisa, he once gave tzedakah, extra money." So the Alter Rebbe explains, Rabbi Hanani ben Tradion, he loved learning and teaching Torah. That was his passion. It wasn't difficult for him to do. It was within his comfort zone. Remaining within your comfort zone, even when you go on Mesiras Nefesh, doesn't make you a ben olam haba. But when you go out of your comfort zone, Rabbi Ephraim Mintz, we're told, was very, very careful with every penny. He was very organized, and every penny meant something to him. And yet he was able to forgo. He did something. He went out of his comfort zone. Every single one of us, and I speak to myself, all of us, we don't have to do a lot. Sometimes it's just a little bit. Sometimes, Alter Rebbe gives an example. If we learn 10 minutes every day, and we go, one day we learn 11 minutes or 12 minutes, or we do a favor, and one day we go out of our way for another yid a little bit. Going out of our way a little bit, doing something that's a little bit difficult for us, allows us to become a better person, and it has an effect on us not only that day, but for many, many years to come.
Rabbi Lipsker.
You just add one little point to all of the thoughts that Rabbi Mintz had just said. It's a very beautiful sikha of the Rebbe, that the Rebbe said when a famous chess champion, was by the Rebbe's Fabrengen at the time. I think in a couple of nights from now, there's a night that we can't learn, and the Rebbe actually speaks about playing chess, to use our seichel in a proper way. But anyways, so there's a famous sikha where the Rebbe discusses the different pieces of the chess and the heroes and avodas Hashem. And without going into the whole arichus of that sikha, what the Rebbe speaks about the pawn is that on the one hand, the pawn seems to be moving the slowest across the board. He could only move one little space at a time, and only in one direction. All the other pieces seem to be able to jump around much greater distances and in all directions. And yet the Rebbe says it's only the pawn that when it reaches all the way to the other side of the board, what happens? It becomes a queen. Suddenly now it can go in all directions, doing so much more than anybody else. Obviously, besides the king, which is a different idea that the Rebbe discusses, king representing the Eibishter and so on. And the Rebbe compares that pawn to the Yid, different to all the other pieces, which the Rebbe compares there to Malachim. And what's relevant to the question that was just asked is a concept that the Rebbe speaks a lot of times about, that in Avodas Hashem, it's always important that we're moving a little bit at a time. In other words, one little bit more, another little bit more, always going in the right direction, one step at a time. Not trying to do too much. Sometimes we become overwhelmed, but just one little bit at a time. I remember seeing an answer of the Rebbe once to someone that asked the Rebbe, how could I be your chassid? Or what does it mean to be your chassid? And the Rebbe answered something to the effect that every person that asks himself on a particular day, how could I today be a little bit better, a little bit more than yesterday, then I consider him my chassid.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to ask Rabbi Lipsker. We're going to close up. We have a few minutes. Rabbi Lipsker, why do we put on tefillin specifically 2 months before Bar Mitzvah?
Okay, I think this is a different kind of question again, going more to Shulchan Aruch. And in Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe actually discusses a machloikas about when a child is supposed to be putting on tefillin. And the Lashon of the Gemara is koton, a koton that can already watch himself and watch the tefillin and so on, should be putting on tefillin. And there's a machloikas harishonim about what koton means over here. And according to some, it actually refers to a 13-year-old boy in certain cases. And the Alter Rebbe says that the halacha really is that we start at 13 years old. And nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe says that there are plenty of people that have the minhag to start 2 or 3 months before Bar Mitzvah. I think among some people today you have a month before, but the Alter Rebbe brings the minhag of 2 or 3 months. And we know what the Rebbe tells us in Hayoim Yoim, that the Hayra L'Rabbim is for 2 months, although the Rabbeim themselves had actually put on at a much earlier time. But the general idea is, of course, in all mitzvahs, it's a very, very important idea of chinuch. In most things, we're doing it from a much younger age. Tefillin have a special kedusha, which we have to be very, very careful with, so we're not doing it at a much younger age, but at least before Bar Mitzvah, we need to start practicing.
Thank you. The hour's late, so I'm going to ask one last question, and I'm going to ask the same question to both of our panelists. Rabbi Mintz, we'll start with you. What is my Rebbe afraid to tell me?
Repeat the question. They're asking.
What is my Rebbe afraid to tell me?
I would say that your Rebbe is afraid to tell you how jealous he is and how envious he is of you. Because he wishes that he was your age and he could do what he perhaps now realizes that he could have done then but didn't. So he wishes that he would be a Bar Mitzvah Bacher again, and he could start now utilizing every moment, perhaps the way he didn't. Not your Rebbeim are amazing, but in other schools. Not every Rebbe always, when they were Bar Mitzvah Bacher, they were perfect. And I think what they wish to tell you, but they don't want to embarrass themselves, is how envious they are of you and how they wish they could be again a Bar Mitzvah and start the clock over and learn better, to acquire more knowledge, Limudat Torah, to spend their time better, to spend their time less on shtusim and on some of the things we spoke about earlier, and to try to connect to Hashem, to Torah, to mitzvahs, to the Rebbe at a younger age, so that our life would be more in tune with Elikus. Sometimes it takes a person when they're in their 40s or 50s or 60s to finally start learning and connecting to Chassidus, and they wish they would have done it when they were younger. We see today Yidden who are not raised in Chabad communities, Yidden with long white beards who are learning Chassidus now for the first time in their life. Today, Baruch Hashem, we're seeing the spreading of Torah Chassidus in ways that we never saw before. Literally, there are so many Yidden who don't call themselves Chassidim. Eventually, everyone will be Chassidim. But today, Yidden who are from a Yidden, who learn Torah and who know a lot of Torah, but unfortunately, because they didn't go like all of us had this chus to go to the Rebbe's yeshiva, they didn't learn Chassidus. They're discovering Chassidus now for the first time in their life, and they wish they would have learned it earlier to appreciate what a mitzvah is, how we connect to Hashem. So I think your Rebbe may be thinking that, how envious they are of you. That's a machshava I thought, perhaps.
Thank you, Rabbi Mintz, Rabbi Lipsker. What do you think? What's our Rebbe's afraid to tell us?
So the first thing is I have to agree with every word Rabbi Mintz said, but just because you're asking the question, so I should say something else as well. And perhaps one thing might be, maybe they are telling you this, but I think Rabbi Mintz mentioned all the way in the beginning something related slightly to this. But sometimes they might be afraid they might be giving us too much. In Chassidus, it's called Yeshivas. They might be afraid they might be giving us, that we might think of ourselves too much if they tell us how important each and every one of us and each and every one of you really, really, really are. If they're going to start telling you, do you know that you matter so much, that you're so important, that the Eibishter created the whole world just for each and every one of you individually, not only for everyone together, but you individually matter so much to the Eibishter. You individually matter so much to the Rebbe's plan of bringing Mashiach. You as an individual, every detail in your life matters, and they're your most precious, special thing in Hashem's eyes. They might be afraid to tell you that because they might think, I'm going to make you a little bit too balgaivadik. But that's not true. We realize it's a responsibility. It's a tremendous chus that each and every one of us could really, really make a difference to the whole world. And we must keep this in mind at all times, always.
Excellent. I want to second that. This is his response is actually even better than mine. They go hand in hand, but what Lipsker is saying is so important, especially the Rebbe says in our generation, because the world there's so much noise. The tumult of the world today, when we were growing up, there's also a tumult. The tumult today is much, the noise and the olam hazeh is making such a tararam, and we could think, I'm a little person. What the words of Lipsker said is so important, and I say amen to all of that, and it also speaks to all of us, even your teachers. All of us have to hear that. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you very much. I do apologize for those that I did not get to their questions. In Mr. Shem, hopefully we'll have a second session in the future. I want to take the opportunity to thank Rabbi Mintz and Rabbi Lipsker for taking from their time to spend it with us and enlighten us on many of these questions. And hopefully, Emir Hashem, moving forward, it will help us as we move forward in our Avodas Hashem and doing everything we can to bring Mashiach. I want to thank Dr. Menachem very much for hosting and wishing you all a Feilich Hanukkah. And we'll be zeicha tonight to light the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash together with Melech HaMashiach.
Amen. Feilich Hanukkah.